Hey everyone, and welcome back to Uncle Sam Fun English. I'm Theus.
And I'm Belle. Ready for another exciting lesson?
Absolutely. Today we're diving into advanced English phrases that natives use daily.
Are you tired of sounding like you're reading from a textbook?
Well, we're here to help you speak like a pro and level up your English.
Let's dive in.
So Belle, why do so many English learners sound, well, a little bit basic when they speak? What's holding them back?
That's a great question, Theus. Often, it's because they rely too heavily on the same simple phrases they learned early on. They stick to things like, very good, or, very interesting, which, while correct, don't sound very natural or engaging.
I know exactly what you mean. I remember when I was learning Portuguese, I kept saying, muito bom, for everything. After a while, a friend told me I sounded like a broken record. Is that the same thing here?
Absolutely. It's about expanding your vocabulary and learning more nuanced ways to express yourself. Many learners understand these advanced phrases when they hear them, but they don't actively use them in their own speech. They get stuck in a comfortable rut. This happens because they lack confidence or haven't actively practiced incorporating these phrases.
So, instead of saying, I'm very happy, they could say, give me some examples of this problem in action.
Exactly. Instead of, I'm very happy, you might hear, I'm really glad, or even, I'm over the moon. And instead of, that's very important, they might say, that's absolutely crucial, or, that's of paramount importance. It adds color and depth to their communication.
I see. And it's not just about sounding better, is it? It's also about understanding more subtle shades of meaning. What's the real impact of this issue?
Precisely. Using more advanced phrases allows you to express yourself more accurately and connect with native speakers on a deeper level. It makes your communication more effective and engaging. Plus, it shows that you have a strong command of the English language, which can be a huge asset in professional and social settings.
Okay, so we've identified the problem. Basic language holding people back. So how do we fix this? How do people move beyond the basics and start sounding more like native speakers?
The key is to actively learn and practice using more advanced phrases. It's about consciously replacing those basic expressions with more nuanced and colorful alternatives, and really integrating them into your daily speech. Alright, so let's get into some actual phrases you can use. First up is, hit the nail on the head. It means to describe exactly what is causing a situation or problem.
Hit the nail on the head? Okay. Can you give me a few examples of how someone might use that in a conversation?
Sure. Imagine a friend is complaining about their job, saying they're overworked and underpaid. You could say, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what's making you miserable. Or, if someone correctly guesses the ending of a movie, you could say, you hit the nail on the head with that prediction. One more?
Yes, please.
Okay. Imagine someone is trying to explain why a project failed at work, and they accurately identify the core issue. Their boss might say, you hit the nail on the head. We need to address that problem immediately.
I think I get it. So, if I said, the weather forecast hit the nail on the head about the thunderstorm, would that make sense? I'm saying it accurately predicted the storm?
Exactly. You got it. It means the forecast was spot on. The key is that you're pinpointing something accurate and important.
What if I said, my doctor hit the nail on the head when she diagnosed my allergy?
That's a great example too. It shows that her diagnosis was perfectly accurate. It is frequently used to express that someone understands the root cause.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So, what if I wanted to use this in a business context?
In a business context, you might say, the marketing team hit the nail on the head with their new campaign. Sales have skyrocketed. Another example is, the consultant hit the nail on the head when they identified our operational inefficiencies. Or, if a CEO accurately predicts a market trend, someone might say, she hit the nail on the head with her analysis of the upcoming recession. This would be a great phrase to use at work to impress your colleagues.
Okay, that's really useful. What's another advanced phrase we can use to sound less basic?
Another great phrase is, to be on the same page. This is used when people have a shared understanding of a situation.
To be on the same page. I think I know this one, but give me some examples to make sure I'm using it correctly.
Of course. If you're working on a group project, you might ask, are we all on the same page about the deadline? This is to check that everyone understands and agrees on when the project is due. Or you could say to your partner, I want to make sure we're on the same page about our finances before we make any big purchases. Another common use is in meetings where the leader is trying to ensure everyone understands the same information and agrees on a path forward.
Ah, I see. So it's about having alignment and shared understanding. Can I use it in a situation where people initially disagreed?
Yes, absolutely. You could say, after a long discussion, we finally got on the same page about the best course of action. It shows that despite the initial disagreement, you eventually reached a mutual understanding.
Perfect. So, can I say, to get someone on the same page?
Yes, you can absolutely use it like that. For instance, you can say, I need to get my team on the same page before we present this to the client, which means that you need to make sure the team fully understands the presentation and is aligned in their approach.
So, Belle, are there any situations where these phrases might not be appropriate, or maybe times when we should choose a simpler expression?
That's a great question, Theus. Context is key. While these phrases are fantastic for everyday conversation with friends, colleagues, or in informal settings, they might not be ideal for very formal presentations or when speaking with someone in a position of authority, initially.
Okay, that makes sense. So, if I were giving a presentation to the CEO of a company, I probably wouldn't say, that's a piece of cake, even if the topic was easy for me, right?
Exactly. Using, that's a piece of cake, in that scenario could come across as unprofessional or even condescending. A more appropriate phrase would be something like, that's quite manageable, or, that's a relatively straightforward process.
Got it. So, it's about being aware of the audience and the overall tone of the situation. Are there any other nuances we should be aware of when using these advanced phrases?
Yes, definitely. Think about regional differences. Some phrases might be more common in certain parts of the English-speaking world than others. For example, Bob's your uncle is very common in British English but might not be as widely understood in the United States.
Ah, good point. So, if I were talking to someone from the US and I said, just add a little water, and Bob's your uncle, they might look at me a bit strangely.
Precisely. They might be wondering who Bob is and why he's suddenly involved in adding water. In that case, a more universal phrase like, and you're all set, or, and there you have it, would be a better choice.
Okay, so knowing your audience and the regional variations is important. What about the level of formality of the phrase itself? Are some of these phrases more formal than others?
Yes, there's definitely a spectrum of formality even within these advanced phrases. For example, to be up to snuff is slightly more formal than to wing it. To be up to snuff suggests meeting a certain standard, while to wing it implies improvisation.
Okay, so if I were talking about the quality of a restaurant's food, I might say, the food wasn't quite up to snuff, but if I were talking about a presentation I hadn't prepared for, I might say, I had to wing it.
Exactly. You're getting the hang of it. Think about how each phrase sounds and the image it evokes. To be up to snuff has a more serious and critical tone, while to wing it is more lighthearted and informal.
So, choosing the right phrase is like choosing the right tool for the job. You wouldn't use a hammer to screw in a screw, and you wouldn't use a very formal phrase in a casual conversation.
That's a perfect analogy. Using the wrong phrase can not only sound awkward but also potentially miscommunicate your intended meaning. It's all about finding the right balance between being expressive and being appropriate.
Okay, so let's say I'm talking to a friend about a difficult project at work. Which of these phrases might be a good fit for that conversation?
Well, depending on the specific situation, you could use a few of them. If the project is surprisingly easy, you could say, it turned out to be a piece of cake. If you're feeling overwhelmed, you could say, I'm swamped with work. Or if you managed to complete the project with minimal preparation, you could say, I had to wing it, but I pulled it off.
So, it's about choosing the phrase that best reflects the specific circumstances and my feelings about them. What about, to be on the same page? How might I use that in a work context?
To be on the same page is a great phrase for ensuring that everyone understands the goals and objectives of a project. You might say, before we start, let's make sure we're all on the same page about the timeline and deliverables.
That's a really useful phrase for avoiding misunderstandings. What about to think outside the box?
To think outside the box is all about encouraging creativity and innovation. You might say, we need to think outside the box to come up with a solution to this problem. It encourages a fresh and unconventional approach.
Excellent. So, stop sounding basic. Really means, start thinking carefully about your word choices and tailoring them to the situation.
Precisely. It's about elevating your English and communicating with greater precision and nuance. These phrases are powerful tools when used correctly. And most importantly, remember to listen to how native speakers use these phrases in real-life conversations to get a better feel for their context and appropriateness.
That's great advice, Belle. So, listen, observe, and practice. And don't be afraid to experiment with these phrases in your own conversations.
Exactly. The more you use them, the more natural they will become. And remember, even native speakers sometimes make mistakes, so don't be too hard on yourself if you don't get it right every time. The key is to keep learning and keep improving. Okay, so let's talk about even more advanced options. Instead of saying, I'm busy, you could say, I'm swamped, or, I'm up to my neck in work.
I'm swamped sounds a little dramatic, doesn't it? Like you're drowning in work.
It does, but it's a common and relatable expression. Think of it as saying you're extremely busy, like a ship overwhelmed by waves. For example, I'd love to help, but I'm completely swamped with this project.
So, swamped is for work overload. What if I just have a lot of appointments and social events?
Then you might say, my plate is full. It implies you have many commitments. You could say, I can't make it to dinner tonight. My plate is completely full this week.
Ah, that makes sense. So, swamped, for work, plate is full, for general busyness.
Exactly. And sometimes natives will say, I'm booked solid, which means every slot in their schedule is occupied. The hair salon is booked solid this weekend, or, I'm booked solid with meetings all day.
And if you're finding this helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Uncle Sam Fun English.
Speaking of busy, instead of saying, I understand, try, I see your point, or, I take your point. It sounds a bit more thoughtful and acknowledges the other person's perspective.
Okay, so instead of just a simple agreement, you're showing you've really considered their point of view.
Precisely. For instance, if someone explains a complicated situation, you could respond with, I see your point, and I appreciate you explaining it to me. It demonstrates empathy.
Right, so, I understand, can sound a bit dismissive sometimes. Using, I see your point, feels more respectful.
Absolutely. And another option is, I hear you, which conveys empathy and understanding. For example, I hear you. That sounds incredibly frustrating.
So, I hear you, is better for situations where someone is expressing emotions or concerns.
Yes, it's perfect for showing you're actively listening and validating their feelings. Think of it as saying, I'm not just hearing the words, I'm hearing the emotions behind them.
Okay, that makes total sense. So, I see your point, for understanding logic, and, I hear you, for understanding emotions.
Precisely. And instead of saying, I don't know, you could say, that's a good question, I'll have to look into that, or, I'm not sure, but I'll find out for you.
That sounds much more proactive than just saying, I don't know. It shows you're willing to take action.
Exactly. It shows initiative and a willingness to learn. For example, if someone asks you a technical question at work, you could say, that's a good question. Let me look into that and get back to you.
So, it's about managing expectations and showing you're responsible.
Yes, and it's also about being helpful. Instead of just admitting ignorance, you're offering a solution or a next step. Natives appreciate that kind of responsiveness.
I like that. It's all about being polite and helpful, even when you don't have the answer immediately.
And lastly, instead of saying something simple like, thank you, every time, you can also say, I appreciate your help, or even, I'm grateful. It just adds a little extra weight to your gratitude.
I'm grateful. Sounds pretty formal, doesn't it? Is that appropriate for all situations?
It can be, but it depends on the context. I appreciate your help is a safe bet for most situations. I'm grateful is great for more significant acts of kindness.
So, I appreciate your help for everyday situations, and I'm grateful for when someone really goes above and beyond.
Exactly. And another great one is, I owe you one. This is a more casual way of expressing gratitude, implying you'll return the favor sometime. Thanks for covering my shift. I owe you one.
That's a good one. It sounds very natural and friendly.
Right. It's a perfect way to show appreciation among friends or colleagues. Just remember to actually return the favor when you get the chance.
Of course. So, we've covered swamped, plate is full. I see your point. I hear you. I'll look into that. I appreciate your help, and I'm grateful. That's a great set of phrases.
Definitely. Using these phrases will make you sound more articulate and native-like in your English conversations. Remember to practice them in your daily interactions. Let's practice. I'm going to give you a basic sentence, and you're going to elevate it using one of the phrases we learned today. Ready? The first sentence is, I'm very busy.
Okay, I'm very busy. How about, I'm swamped with work? Is that a good one?
That's a good start, Theus, but swamped is pretty common. Think about one of the less frequently used options. Remember, we want to sound advanced. How about using up to my ears?
Okay, so, I'm up to my ears in work. That sounds a bit better, more descriptive.
Exactly. I'm up to my ears in work. Implies you're completely overwhelmed, and it's a bit more colorful than just saying, I'm very busy. It shows a greater command of the language.
Okay, I'm getting it. Let's try another one. How about this? I'm tired.
Alright, a simple one. Think about how you could express being tired in a more engaging way, using some of the more advanced phrasing. What comes to mind?
Okay, I'm tired. I could say, I'm beat, but that's still pretty basic. How about, I'm running on fumes?
Running on fumes is great. It paints a vivid picture. You're not just tired, you're operating on almost no energy. Perfect. You could also say, I'm completely knackered, for a British English alternative.
Nice. I'm running on fumes. I like that a lot. Okay, one more practice sentence. I'm excited about the trip.
Okay, I'm excited about the trip. How can we make that sound a bit more sophisticated, a little less ordinary?
Instead of excited, maybe something like thrilled. So, I'm thrilled about the trip.
Thrilled is a good step up. But let's push it further. Remember, over the moon? How could you incorporate that?
Okay, I'm over the moon about the trip. That sounds way more enthusiastic and less like something you'd read in a textbook.
Fantastic. See how much more impact that has. It conveys genuine excitement, and it's a phrase that native speakers use regularly to express strong positive emotions.
So, the key is to think beyond the first word that comes to mind, right? Explore those slightly less common, more descriptive options.
Absolutely. It's about expanding your vocabulary and becoming comfortable using those less frequently heard phrases. Let's try another one. A bit trickier this time. I understand what you're saying.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. How about, I get your point?
I get your point is okay, but it still feels a bit common. Let's aim for something that really showcases your English skills. Think about expressing agreement or understanding in a more nuanced way.
Alright, let me think. Maybe, I see where you're coming from. Does that work?
I see where you're coming from is excellent. It shows empathy and understanding of their perspective, not just comprehension of their words. It also softens potential disagreement.
Got it. So, it's not just about understanding, but also about acknowledging their viewpoint. How about if I really, really agree?
Then you could use something like, I'm on the same page. Or, to be even more emphatic, we're singing from the same hymn sheet, especially in British English.
We're singing from the same hymn sheet. I love that. It paints such a clear picture of complete agreement.
Exactly. Now, it's your turn to practice. Think about a time you felt overwhelmed, tired, or excited. Try to describe it using the advanced phrases we've covered today.
Okay, I'm thinking. Last week, I was really swamped. So I could say, last week, I was up to my ears in deadlines, running on fumes, but I'm finally over the moon to be done.
Excellent. You've woven several of those phrases together seamlessly. And that's the goal, to integrate them naturally into your everyday conversations.
So, listeners, try this yourself. Think of a simple sentence you use often and challenge yourself to find a more advanced alternative. You'll be surprised at how quickly you can elevate your English. So today, we learned 7 advanced phrases native speakers use daily to elevate your English.
Remember, practicing these phrases in your daily conversations will make you sound more fluent and natural.
Don't be afraid to try them out and make mistakes. That's how you learn.
Remember to subscribe to Uncle Sam Fun English for more lessons like this.
Thanks for listening. Keep practicing.
See you next time. Bye everyone.